Hello again, my friends, and welcome to this comic review video. Well, sort of comic review. This is the second video on my sort of DC reading journey, or DC reading project, or whatever you want to call it. Last time we looked at the DC comics from 1935, and this time we're looking at the ones from 1936. Not any huge changes between those 2 years. In 35 we had New Fun Comics issue 1 to 6, which in 36 changes name to More Fun Comics, and we get issues 7 to 16 in 36. And then their second line of comics is called New Comics, and that we get issues 2 to 11 in 36. So I was able to track down most of these, well, not physical copies, but I could find them online, sort of scans of them. I think all but 3 of them. I don't remember the exact number, but there were a couple that I was missing. But you know, it's not that really important for me to find every single one of them. I just sort of want to see the trends of the year and such. Now, New Comics generally has longer stories in each issue than New Fun Comics, aka More Fun Comics, had. But in 36, you can kind of see that, you know, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, the stories in More Fun Comics have become longer as well, and you sort of go from 1 page, well, in some cases even half a page, to 3, maybe 4 pages in both More Fun Comics and New Comics. So I think that's nice, because it makes for an easier reading experience. I think that you get sort of longer story elements in each issue. So I appreciated that. We still get a lot of comedy and western, which some of the comedy series I wasn't very interested in, not my style, and to be honest, I actually skipped some of them that I just sort of knew was not my thing. And I think the artwork overall becomes better in 36, because in 35 there were a couple that I actually thought were really bad artwork, and it gets better in 36. And there were actually a couple, one called Story of Tartans, which was not actually a series, it's more like this sort of trivia page with illustrations, and then one series called Blood Pearls. I actually thought the artworks to those two were like extra good compared to the others, so some really nice ones there. And I think the artwork overall in 36 becomes less cartoony. I mean, yes, the comedic stories are still sort of cartoony because that's sort of their nature, but just looking at the issues overall, there are a lot of more realistic artwork. I mean, some of it is fantasy and so it's not realistic in that way, but more sort of, you know, the people you're looking at actually really look like people and not sort of strange, silly looking things. I think you understand what I'm talking about. I think you get more and more of that in 36, which is nice, because those are the kinds of stories that I want, and that kind of artwork that I want. There are still a lot of racist stereotypes in here, some, you know, sort of blackface and such, and it's kind of awkward and uncomfortable. But yeah, I don't know, I'm just looking at it as sort of a historical document and just, you know, go with it. I did skip some of those stories where I can just sort of tell from the beginning that, yeah, this is not gonna be good, so I did skip some of those. We also get some sports themed stories this time, which you didn't have in 35, which is also not really something I'm interested in, but it was nice to see them sort of trying in different areas. You know, we have the comedy, and we have a little bit of sci-fi, and we have some detective stories. You know, let's do some sports stories, you know. it makes sense, I think, even though I didn't particularly like them myself. I can see why they would do that. Some of the returning characters from 35, you know, my favorites would be Sandra of the Secret Service, which was like the very first female lead character. And we also have Don Drake and Brad Hardy, which I mentioned in the previous video. That is sci-fi and fantasy respectively. Those are still pretty fun stories. And we also get a story called Super Police, which I forgot to mention in the previous video, but that is sort of this futuristic police serial of some kind. I think the complete title is like 2023 Super Police, so maybe I think it's supposed to take place in the year 2023. I don't know. That one is still pretty fun. We get some new characters and some new stories. We get the character that I think is considered DC's very first superhero, and I think the only character out of the ones I've encountered so far that actually survive beyond the 30s, and which would be Dr. Occult, who is this sort of supernatural detective kind of character. He investigates vampires and werewolves and all sorts of stuff, and he supposedly has some supernatural abilities like astral projection or something like that. We haven't seen much of that yet, but I do like the stories. They are pretty interesting. We get a couple of novel adaptations or sort of adaptations of previous stories. So we get one of King Arthur, which was pretty nice. We get Tale of Two Cities, which is also pretty nice. And we get one of Rider, what's his name? Rider H. Haggard, I think, or something like that, who wrote a fantasy novel called She, you know, S-H-E. And some of these issues contain a adaptation of that, which was really nice because I actually, well, I mean, She has its problems, but I do kind of like the story, and I actually have several movie adaptations of that book, so it was interesting to read a comic adaptation of it, and it was, I think, one of my favorite stories in here. I mean, She, like I said, she has problems, but it is still a pretty nice story, and it's She, I think, is an important part of the history of fantasy literature, so that was nice to see. That was a pleasant surprise. We get another female-centered story, which is called Dale Daring, and then sort of have different subtitles for each adventure, and she's this sort of detective / adventurer who encounters all sorts of things, and that was also nice. We get a story called Sandra of the Lost Civilization, which is some kind of Jungle Book / Tarzan rip-off. There's even one of the characters that are like named almost exactly the same as one of the characters in Jungle Book, and I'm just like, yeah, I can tell where you got your inspiration here. But you know, plagiarism aside, I thought that storyline was pretty neat too. We get another one called Steve Conrad on Dolorosa Isle or something like that, which is an adventure story on this fictitious island. I think it's fictitious anyway. He encounters all sorts of strange tribes and animals and beasts, and you know, have all sorts of adventures there. Not my number one favorite story in here, but I think it might be worth a look if you're interested. We got another story called Federal Men. I don't think this series is necessarily sci-fi, but there was one story which included giant robots fighting with each other, which was pretty fun, I think. And then we also have one called Mark Morrison of the Interplanetary Police. so far I've only read one story with him, which was in like one of the last issues of the year 36, but I think he returns in 37, and that was also pretty nice. Now overall, because, you know, in each issue there are so many stories, I'm just gonna say I will give overall each issue 3 stars, because we haven't really gotten to a point where it's easy to give individual issues different ratings, because there are just so many things going on in each issue. But I have highlighted some of my favorite parts here, some of my favorite characters. If you're interested in like comic history, you know, I do think there are some things worth checking out here. But like I said, I do believe Dr. Occult is really the only one who still sort of exists in the DC universe. I don't think there are any new comics with him in them, but I looked up online and I think there were, at least in like the 80s, there were some with him in it. So he at least is worth a look if you're you know, into modern DC comics. The other ones are sadly forgotten DC characters, but I think some of them were pretty fun. So yeah, that was the DC of 1936, and then we will be moving on to 37 and eventually 38, which is, I believe, the year that Superman enters the picture, so I'm looking forward to that. And eventually I will not be doing, you know, I will not continue to do sort of review year by year. I'm just doing it now in the beginning where we have so many like different things. But eventually I will do more like, well, we have this collection of Superman stories, or this collection of Batman stories, and I will review those individually. But for now I'm doing it like this because I think it works well for the very first year now. But yeah, are you into DC, and are you familiar with any of the characters that I mentioned? Share your thoughts down below. You know, if you have anything else to share, share your thoughts down below in the comment section. You know, whatever you feel like writing, I would love to hear from you. Like and subscribe if you feel like it, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.